morning. Good morning. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Rhonda, and today we are going to light the Advent calendar. I'm not having a stroke, I promise. The Advent candle, and if I were, I know somebody would take care of me. There we go. Okay, do this again. Today we light the Advent candle of peace. Luke 1:78-79 says, "Because God's tender mercy, the morning light from heaven, is about to break upon us, to give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, and to guide us to the path of peace." Go away. All right, for those of you who were here last week, you know that in our children's ministry, in the elementary room, we are giving away pieces of this handmade nativity scene, carved by Ken Edgerly, Maria Pearson, and myself, mostly by Ken Edgerly because he's our expert. But last week, kids received Joseph, and this week, they will receive Mary. So yes, this is something that's very special because it's handmade, and since we're talking about the Nativity, it's perfect. This will be going on up until Christmas time, so elementary kids, come to church.
It was what the prophet Micah would call the least among the clans of Judah. South of Jerusalem, west of the Salt Sea. Heads of wheat bowed to the blades of harvest. Grapes glistened in the afternoon sun. Sheep stumbled along the stony high grounds. Here Jacob would gain a son and bury his beloved Rachel. Ruth would find refuge in the barley fields. Samuel would find a king among the shepherds. Shepherds would find a king among the sheep. Soon the tramp of soldiers' feet would fill the silence. Mothers would mourn the lost sons of Bethlehem. The holiness of one night in the little town would be stolen by the sword. But all was not lost. One would survive. Like Ruth, he would wander without a home. Like Boaz, he would provide bread for those in need. Like David, he would come from a humble beginning. Like the children who were lost, he would be pierced by a sword. And through the innocence of his death, this son of Bethlehem would become our peace.
I'm coming. Just a minute. Hold on. I'm coming. Oh, forget it. Flour, sugar, baking powder, eggs, milk, butter. Yes, it's cold. Vanilla extract, mint extract, almond extract. CBD extract? Whatever. Cinnamon, nutmeg, candy cherries, walnuts, almonds, pecans, brown sugar, powdered sugar, more flippin' sugar. Cocoa powder, vegetable oil, coconut oil, Crisco, lard, organic cocoa powder, Rice Krispies, marshmallow fluff, pumpkin pie spice, pine scented candle, and a partridge and a pear tree, Ma. Yes, I 100% knew it was you. You're the only one who calls on the landline because everyone else knows it's 21st century. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to place an order for food I can actually stomach while I grow your grandchild in my uterus. No, you're right. I'm sorry. That was uncalled for. I'm really excited to bake cookies with my nieces and nephews, and apparently the troops of the 1st Airborne Division. Yes, Mom. Merry Christmas. Peace on earth. Goodwill toward men. Blah, 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 blah. Peace. What peace? Where's the peace? I sure don't have any peace. It's stupid that we even say peace on earth during Christmas time. Between the decorating, the shopping, the baking, I sure don't have any peace. Peace on earth. I'd settle for a piece of fudge. That'll work. I want peace. I really do. So why am I a growing ball of chaos ready to unleash on the world? I'm scared. Scared I won't be a good mom. No. Scared I won't be the perfect mom. Scared I won't give you the perfect Christmas every year. God, what am I thinking? You don't need a perfect Christmas every year. Just the first. And the second. Perfect 5th and 10th would be ideal. Perfect 13th Christmas, right before you hate me. Perfect 18th Christmas, right before you leave me. Oh God, what am I thinking, kiddo? Peace on earth. You know, your great-grandpa's idea of a perfect Christmas was a tree. He grew up during the Great Depression, and on a good year, he'd come out of the room he shared with his 3 little sisters, and there'd be a tree on Christmas morning. And, no decorations, no presents, just the tree. And your grandpa's Christmas present every year was a new set of work gloves. I mean, they went through World War II and Vietnam, and I remember 9/11. Peace on earth. And what's going on in the Middle East and Africa and downtown, and there's so much baking. Oh! Goodwill toward men, huh? Goodwill toward you, little one. Can't promise you peace on earth, but I will try to give you what my mom gave me. Oh no, not the crazy lady I was talking to on the phone earlier. That was Christmas grandma, who has nothing better to do than to knit ugly sweaters and watch Hallmark movies. No. Many years ago, she was my mom. My mommy. And on Christmas morning, after we opened presents, Dad would put on some instrumental collection of Christmas hymns and curl up in Ma's lap. And she'd read us a bunch of stories, like Gift of the Magi, It Was the Night Before Christmas, Tale of Three Trees. She always ended with Luke chapter 2. Year after year, no matter how big I got, no matter how much my sister begged, Mom held me. And I'd listen to those stories, and I'd listen to her heart, and just breathe. That was when Christmas was perfect. That was peace. Promise to give that to you. Hi, Mom. What did I forget? What do you mean candied ginger root, and powdered ginger? Ma, I'm not making a 4-foot-tall gingerbread house.
Good morning, everyone. I am Morgan. For those of you that don't know me, I, along with Catherine, she's around here every once in a while. She works nights, so it's hard for her to get here on Sunday mornings, but she helps me with the prayer counter in the back that you guys get to enjoy every week. We are looking for volunteers. What that looks like is it's a variety of things. So it could be, utilizing your creative and artistic abilities. You don't have to be an artist of, that you've sold things or anything like that, but just having creativity and wanting to serve God with that. Or if you just want to help set up stuff, sometimes it's hard for us to get here if we're out of town or things like that. So oftentimes we'll just have, we'll take pictures of it, and then all you have to do is put things out on the counter and that kind of thing too. So if you're interested, feel free to reach out to me. I'll be here after service and to chat, or if you need my cell phone number, you want to chat sometime, just kind of pray about it. That'd be really helpful. Because currently there's 3 of us doing it, and it's a lot to manage. I mean, just with, work schedules and, traveling schedules and that kind of thing. So, just wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit. And next we're going to have the worship team come up and get ready for our musical worship. We do have lots of different ways that we do worship here at the Gathering House. So as mentioned, we have the art reflection counter there in the back. We do ask that if the children want to participate in that they have a parent go with them, just to make sure that they're able to engage with it and just engage with it safely so that everybody else can enjoy it as well. We also have the prayer barn in the back. So if you have a prayer request, please feel free to go back there and leave that. People throughout the week, as the coffee shop is open, go and pray for those as well. So it's a pretty amazing thing to see what's back there and see what prayers have been answered and that kind of thing too. So we do have offering as well. So there's an offering box over there on the counter. So if you'd like to engage with that, you can also give online at our website. And last over here, we've got communion. If you've accepted Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, we do invite you to participate in that as well when you feel led to do so during musical worship.
Thank you, Morgan. Would you please stand with us?
Okay, my name is Jim. We're doing things in a little bit of different order. We're doing announcements now, and I've got like a ton of them, and usually I go on and on. I can turn 3 announcements into 10 minutes. I've got 8. I'm going to do them in 3 minutes instead of the 6 they give me. So I'm not going to explain a lot of detail, just going to give you information, okay? Let's start with Connect cards. Let's see if I have one here. That's these blue cards. They're on tables, they're at the end of rows, and they're over here on the counter. We'd love to know who you are and why you're here. And if you need prayer, put that on there too. Just let us know. We want to connect with you. Let's see, next. Pledge cards. As the leadership team starts looking towards next year and budgeting and planning our next year what things we want to do for our community and for our church, it makes sense to know kind of what funds we will have available to do those things. So if you have not filled out a pledge card, please do so. They're again on tables or over there, and throw them in the offering so we can add that to what we've been doing this, 3-4 weeks now. But we'd like you to, if you call this home, please let us know what you can do January through December of next year. Okay, moving on to 3. India fundraiser. We've had a fundraiser going on. It's announced maybe in this. India fundraiser. We wanted to raise $1,500 to send for orphans in India and a church we connect with to buy blankets and food, and we have exceeded the expectation. And so, so that's been phenomenal. And you guys are such a giving church. I mean, look around. We're not a big church. We're not anything close to big, even mega, and you do so much. So thank you. This will be the last day. We want to send that tomorrow. So it's not next week today. So again, you can put a donation. There's envelopes over there. Put the check or whatever money in it and write India on the envelope. Or you can go online today, because tomorrow we want to send that so they can get these gifts by Christmas. So if you go online to give, make sure in the footnote put India, and it'll get to the right spot. Okay, let's see. We have, last day of pledge cards, okay. The coat drive is going well, and next week is the last week. Joanna will be over here by the coats after service if you have any questions. So see Joanna over here. She'll be standing right there by that thing's called a telephone for you young kids. Yeah, okay. Let's see, we have from the bonfire last night, those that came or those that helped, thank you so much. We have extra some more packages over there on the counter on the way out, if those would be something you'd want to take a couple of. And let's see, what else did we have there? Oh, and there's a card over there, Pete Canfield, who's one of our regular attendees. He's had some major surgeries going on and a lot of ups and downs where things go real well and then all of a sudden he takes a dive. And so we have a card that will be given to him. So if you know Pete Canfield and would like, sign a card over there on your way out. And then the last is, yeah, I think I got everything. The last one is on one of these flyers, and that's coming up. It's the gospel concert that's coming up that we host every year. And then the end of the year, or New Year's Day, or the day before that, we have 24-hour prayer. That's the 24-hour prayers in our building here. Again, we support those. So everything's on the flyer. The webpage has a lot of it. And please remember, the thing that I always do is I hear these announcements, and then Rob gives the message, and an hour later I forget to stop and do the things that I planned on doing. So try to lock those in your brain if you want to give to ask Joanna about codes, give to India, sign the card for Pete, that kind of stuff, pledge cards. Try to remember to lock those in because I always forget anyway by the time service is over. So thank you guys. We love you and appreciate you being here.
I always laugh at that. That video came out like 9 years ago, and every time I've seen it since, it's been funny. Now, other churches are trying to copy it, but nobody does it as good as that Southland church who did that. Children's Nativity. Every year around Christmas time, there is this interesting billboard fight. Atheists like to put billboards up all over town, particularly around New York, and here's one of them, like, Atheist Christmas, the more the merrier. If you're going to church, this Christmas, no, I'm not. Make Christmas great again. Skip church, the atheist organ. And then they'll put billboards say, it's a myth. In this season, celebrate reason. Or go ahead and skip church. Just be good for goodness sake. Happy holiday. Atheists going out of their way to tell people, stop going to church. This whole story doesn't make any sense. And who needs Christ during Christmas? Nobody. The atheists put these billboards up all over different cities around America. And the Catholics like to respond with, keep Christ in Christmas. They put their billboards up. And there's the Catholic League says, send modern day Scrooge a message. Celebrate the Prince of Peace. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. It's real. This season, celebrate Jesus. And to all of our atheist friends, all he wants for Christmas is you. And there's been this ongoing year after this funny little billboard fight between the atheists and the Catholic League. But it brings us to this interesting sort of thought today. How many of you recognize this little tableau? Every single person in the room. You know what this is. This is the Nativity. And you may not be able to explain it all, but when you see it, you're like, oh yeah. And most people, much like those kids, they know, there's a baby Jesus, and there's what people would say is 3 kings, and you're going to have your Joseph and Mary, an angel and a shepherd, and that's kind of the scene, and everybody knows that's the scene. Even if we can't fully explain, how real is this? Is this historical? Is this legit? The atheists, right? Is it a myth? The Catholics, right? Is this the real thing? Why is this little tableau being set up all the time around Christmas time? This is being set up. And in our culture, it gets bumped to the side for Santa Claus. So you'll see 10 times as much Santa Claus as you will ever see Jesus at Christmas time. So I wanted to go through this today and sort of look at this nativity and say, how real is this? What does it mean? What is the symbolism going on here with all of this stuff? And to do that, we're going to look at Luke chapter 2, and we're going to be dabbling a little bit in Matthew. I think I put all the Bible verses together in this one, but we'll find out. So let's take a look at Luke chapter 2, and let's do 1 through 5. And it came to pass in those days that a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be registered. This census first took place while Quirinius was governing Syria. So all went to be registered, everyone to his own city. Joseph also went up from Galilee out of the city of Nazareth into Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David, to be registered with Mary, his betrothed wife, who was with child. All right, so here's kind of how it begins. The governor of Syria, he's governing all of what we would call the Middle East on behalf of the Roman Empire. He's the highest guy next to Caesar himself. And so Quirinius is the governor of Syria, which tells us this is taking place in a historical time, in a historical context, because they're naming who was governor at the time. And this decree goes out, and so everybody has to return to their hometown in order to be registered. And at the time, both Mary and Joseph are living way the heck and gone up in Nazareth, which isn't even close to their hometown. In fact, it's about 90 miles, so they have to travel a 7 to 10 day journey. And there's two routes to go. One is to go through the hilly route that would go through Samaria. Most Jewish people who are good and clean would avoid that because they might bump into a dirty Samaritan. And so they avoided Samaria. They were two people who didn't get along very much. And it was rugged, rough terrain. The more common route would be to go down and then cut across the Jordan, skirt down the Jordan Valley, and then go up to Jerusalem and then down to Bethlehem that way. Although that last run from Jericho to Jerusalem is incredibly intense and quite the hills, I can say, having been there. And so here they are, these two people living way the heck up in Nazareth. And the question comes is like, why are Mary and Joseph living 90 miles away from their hometown? And if you look at the two genealogies, in the beginning of Matthew, there's a genealogy of Jesus. In the beginning of Luke, there's a genealogy of Jesus. And if you put the names together and really matched them up, and it's hard because one like starts with Joseph and goes backwards, and the other starts with Abraham and goes forward. So you got to do a lot of work to line them up. But you would see the names don't exactly match. And so most scholars look and they think Luke's genealogy is the biological line going all the way back to King David through Mary. It's her biological line. And the other one in Matthew is the king line of the firstborn, and it takes Joseph all the way back to King David. So Jesus is both the king by birth from his father, the right to be king, firstborn, and he's also biologically connected to King David through Mary. But why are they in Nazareth? Their hometown's Bethlehem. That's the city of David. That's where their relatives are. That's where the clan is. That's where everybody should be hanging out. If you're from that family line, you're from the tribe of Judah. And if you're from the tribe of Judah, you belong down there in Judea, where their tribe got settled. So why are they way the heck and gone up around the Sea of Galilee, which is more like Naphtali and Asher, those tribes that are up there? They don't belong in that territory. And the only reason you could look and explain it is really one thing. At the time, King Herod is ruling over that whole region. And King Herod the Great is not even a Jew. He's adopted Judaism, but he's actually an Edomite. He's not even a Jew, and he's ruling the throne, and King Herod will kill anyone who has a claim to the throne. And so at some point, Joseph and Mary, knowing their biological line and knowing their own genealogy, said, we got to get out of town. And so they hightailed it all the way up to Nazareth, and they've been, for lack of a better term, hiding out there. And then comes this decree, you've got to go back to your hometown because the brand new Caesar, who's taken over the Roman Empire, is doing a census. He wants to count everybody in the empire so he can figure out who's living where and how many guys could I recruit for military and what should the taxes be. So now they have to go down all the way to Bethlehem, and she is clearly 9 months pregnant. Think about that. What a journey that's going to be. 90 miles, 7 to 10 day journey. Mostly we see her riding on a donkey, but that's the thing. We don't know if they might have had to walk it. He might have carried her in some kind of cart where he was the donkey. We don't really know how they got down there, but I can tell you it was rough and rugged terrain and not a fun trip to do when you're 9 months pregnant. But by law, they had to do it. When they're going all the way down to Bethlehem, and the timing couldn't actually be more perfect. Because they were living way up in Nazareth, but as Jesus is being born, he has to be born in Bethlehem because there's this old prophecy from Micah chapter 5, verse 2, a prophet who would live more than 500 years before Jesus. And he would say, but you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, Though you are little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of you shall come forth to me the one to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth are from of old, from everlasting. This prophecy had been made that this baby, the next ruler, the king, the Messiah, would be born in Bethlehem, which was a sleepy little nothing town at this point in history. So was Nazareth, by the way. Both Nazareth and Bethlehem were these tired little sleepy towns. But a prophecy had been made. The Messiah must be born or come from Bethlehem. And so when they have to go down there, they don't even know it, but they're fulfilling this prophecy. And Galatians chapter 4-5 says, but when the fullness of time had come, God sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. What does it mean the fullness of time had come? At the right time, and just the right moment in history, when everything had finally come together, it was the perfect time for Jesus to be born. That's what it's saying. And we look at this and say, well, I don't get how this all fits together. What does it mean, the right time? Well, it all fits with Caesar's decree. And this is a time period that fascinates scholars. See, Alexander the Great had swept out of Macedonia 300 years before Jesus would be born, more than 300 years. And he sweeps across the Middle East. He goes all the way down to Egypt, conquers Egypt, sweeps across Persia, conquers it all. And along the way, he made everybody adopt Greek culture. Everybody had to learn Koine Greek is what it would be called, the Greek language, study in Greek. It would become the common tongue. He would take their gods and their way of life and their values. He would take all of the Aristotles and the Platos and all the philosophies, and he would take everything Greece had been, and he swept it all across the Middle East, all the way into Persia, forcing everybody to adopt Greek culture. You could keep your own, but you were going to add Greek culture. So much so that it would become the common language. And 300 years later, when the New Testament people need to write something that everybody can read and everybody can understand, the thing we would call the New Testament, it's written in Greek. It's not written in Roman Latin. It's not written in Hebrew. It's not written in Syria or Aramaic. It's written in Greek because it was the one language everybody would know. So Alexander the Great spreads across Europe, does that. Then he dies, of course. After 10 years, they don't know if he was poisoned or if he was killed. The kingdom's divided in two. There's a lot of brouhaha for the next 300 or 400 years. And then somewhere along the year, somewhere in the 3rd century, 100 years after Alexander the Great, this little upstart town called Rome comes on the scene. And Rome starts growing. Now, Rome doesn't have a culture. Rome doesn't have gods even. They don't really have a religion. They don't have a culture. They don't have art. They don't have architecture. They're really good at stealing ideas from other people and perfecting them. The one thing Rome is marvelous at is their military. They can organize their military, and they love to organize things. They didn't so much invent things as they organized them better, improved them, made them better. And so Rome has this massive military, and it's marching on. And then there comes a time, a little over 100 years before Jesus, that there would be these two guys finally emerge, Julius Caesar, Pompey the Great. There have been numerous civil wars, and these two guys finally quenched the civil wars and agreed to split the empire together. Pompey would take one side, Julius Caesar would take the other, and they basically conquer the entire European theater, the entire Mediterranean area. It all becomes Romanized. And instead of actually bringing their culture, they just borrow Alexander the Great and the Greek culture, and they rename the gods. So, Zeus becomes Jupiter, and Apollo becomes Saturn. Aphrodite becomes Venus. And so they actually steal they're like, hey, we don't really have a religion, but hey, this Greek one looks pretty good, so let's just use it. And so they just adopt it, change it, modify it, but they're really good at organization. It's why their military is so good, because they didn't just give a bunch of guys, here's a sword, here's a shield, go out there and see what you can do. They highly trained and fought as units, and so they were able to come in with overwhelmed against overwhelming odds, but since they fought as a unit, they could wipe out just about anybody who went against them. And so for a while, Rome keeps expanding. And by the time you have Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great, they're from Spain deep into Turkey and modern-day Egypt and Israel, and all the way from France down to the southern tip of Egypt. They are controlling that entire area. And they, of course, keep fighting. There's civil wars. Eventually, Julius Caesar and Pompey the Great would go to war with each other, duke it out until Julius Caesar would be the last man standing, and he would become the first true emperor of Rome. And of course, the Roman Senate doesn't like that because, like, hey, we've never had an emperor. We've always been a republic. We don't like this guy. So if you know the story, they stab him to death in the Senate to get rid of the tyrant. And all that does is create more civil war, because now his young nephew and his buddy, so we have Octavian and Mark Antony, join forces, and they take out Cassius and Brutus, and more civil war. And finally, Mark Antony and Octavian win, and they conquer all of Rome. And then Antony gets too big for his britches, so now Octavian and Antony go to war, and Antony meets up with Cleopatra, and the whole thing fights again. And by the time the dust settles, everybody's dead except Octavian. And he takes over the entire Roman Empire. And he changes his name to Augustus Caesar. Actually, he didn't change it. The Romans gave him that name. And the Senate was so sick and tired of the fighting, so sick and tired of the civil wars, that they finally said, okay, you now control everything, and you've got the army, and nobody wants to say thousands and thousands of guys have been slaughtered and killed, and senators and noblemen have had their land confiscated. They're sick and tired. They're done. So they just all bow down to Octavian and say, it's yours. You rule us now. We're tired of this fighting. And they give him the name Augustus, which means illustrious one. And they call him the religious ruler and the political ruler over all mankind. And it's right, basically a short period after that, he says, okay, now that I'm fully in charge, let's count what we have now. Let's see who's living where. How many people are there? How big could my armies be? How much taxation should there be? Basically investigate the land, see where we need to do all kinds of things, from building roads and aqueducts to establishing temples to whatever it may take. He's wanting to do all that. And the timing is absolutely unique in the history of the world for the spread of Christianity that's about to happen. Because Julius Caesar and Pompey had wiped out all the pirates in the Mediterranean. Wars and battles between factions had happened. Spain had revolted. Greece had tried to revolt against Julius Caesar. All these countries had tried to revolt, and they'd all been put down. And now by the time you get to Caesar Augustus, there's something called the Pax Romana. The Roman peace is all over the entire European and Mediterranean theater. And so everybody now has common language. They have common literature. They have common laws. He made all the laws, so everybody's using the same taxation system, and they're building roads everywhere, and they're building aqueducts everywhere. They're actually increasing the quality of life everywhere they've been. The Romans increased the quality of life for everyone, but they just taxed the snot out of people to do it. So there's always these rebellions of people tired of being taxed. They're like, I want my freedom. Like, you know, the Romans, what have they ever done for us? Well, they gave you the clean water and the aqueducts. I mean, besides the aqueducts. Well, they built the roads. Yeah, besides the roads, right? Well, it's safe to walk the streets at night. I mean, besides that, right? And so, but the Romans had done so. Now you have the fullness of time when everything comes on, and there's unity from Spain to the Middle East, from way up north and even parts of southern Britain all the way down to the southern tip of Egypt. There is one culture, there is one set of laws. You could travel all of it, you could move across it, it had common laws. The brigands had been put down, the fighting had been put down, there was peace. And God knows I'm using this moment in history because I'm about to spread a message of the death of my son that's going to go across all of this empire and change the world. So Augustus codified laws. He took over the food supplies. He revised the tax laws. He set up a census every 14 years. There's ancient Egyptian documents they found that record some of these going all the way back to 8 BC. And everyone across the Roman Empire also knew something at this time. Everyone from Spain to Egypt and France to Israel knew there's a legend that a king's going to come from Palestine. There's a legend that had spread across the entire empire, and everybody knew that at some point a king is going to come out of this area. At that time, it's not even called Palestine, it's just Judea. And they know this legend is coming. And so God had moved all of this because 700 years before, it had been prophesied that this king was going to come out of this Judean wilderness. And so normally when you see this tableau, what you would see next is like usually there's a barn over it, right? When you see the nativity, it's always got a barn over it. But that's European. They wouldn't have had a barn over the nativity. In fact, Joseph and Mary weren't in a stable the way you and I would see it, because you have this thing where this is a picture done by Jerome in 1854. I love it because you have Caesar Augustus finally sitting on the throne, and all the world is coming to him, bowing in homage, and the wise men are there, the great Greek philosophers, and everybody's paying homage to him and bringing the slave trade to him and bringing the coins to him from all over the world. And right down front is an angel hovering over two nondescript nobodies. A guy named Joseph and a woman named Mary, a blue-collar worker in the backwaters of Palestine. And there you have everybody paying homage to the Lord and the God of Caesar Augustus, while the true God is being born in his reign at his time. So there's your Roman Empire at the time. It's the height. You could travel all across it. And so then you look at this, you say, so Luke chapter 2. So it was that while they were there, the days were completed for her to be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son and wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger. That little underlined part I put in there, laid him in a manger, that's the only place where you can decide that Jesus was born in a barn. Because she lays him in a manger, they must have been, like, where were they? It never says they were in a stable. It never says where they were. But laid him in a manger makes everybody go, well, a manger is a food trough for animals. So that must be there, because there was no room for them in the inn. So that's how we know Jesus was in a stable of some kind, because she lays him in a manger. Now, in the ancient early art, it was always a cave. Whenever they show pictures in really early Christian art, Mary is inside a cave. She's not in a wooden barn, because in the Middle East, they didn't have a lot of wood. And you sure wouldn't waste wood building a barn. You might build a house or fences out of it, but wood was hard and precious to come by. But in the Middle East, there's caves everywhere. So in the Middle East, back in Israel, animals aren't housed in a wooden structure. They're put inside a cave, and you just put a little fence across the cave, looking more like that. They would put rocks up and those kind of things. So really, Jesus isn't born in a wooden barn. He's born inside a cave with a fence out front where they would keep the animals. It was very typical for people to build a house on top of the hillside, and then there would be caves down below, and then they'd keep their animals down there and fence them in, and they would kind of live above them, and those would be down below. So both Mary and Joseph are now in Bethlehem. You ever thought about this? They're going back to their hometown, right? That's why they got to go to Bethlehem. They don't have any family members who will take them in. They don't have any second cousins or great Aunt Martha or, cousin Billy Joe Raybob. They got no room. Nobody left in their family. Like, nobody says, oh, well, for crying out loud, that's Mary. She's part of she's my aunt's daughter's, whatever. She should stay with us. Nobody wants them. There's no room for them. And the place is crowded, and maybe there was, we're all full up, but there's nowhere to go, and nobody stay with us. Now, it's also possible that, we know from just historically the times, she's in her teens. Probably somewhere between 15 and 18, more common. Girls could be married as young as 13 in those days. But she's clearly in her teens, and she's pregnant. And they've got Joseph. And remember, they were betrothed. They hadn't gotten married yet. So chances are when they showed up in their own hometown where they were from and the origins of their family and their distant relatives were, everybody said, oh, not you two. No, look at you. No, you're not coming to my house. And so they had nowhere to go. And so they find themselves saying, at some point, the inn says, well, look, I got one place left, and it's the stable. You want to sleep down there in the barn with the sheep and the goats and that, you can go down there. And that's where they go, and it is that night that she has the baby. And you think about that. Think about the high infant mortality that was happening in those days. I mean, having a baby was dangerous. Having a baby was a 50-50 chance the baby would live or the mother would live. It was a nerve-wracking thing. And if you're a young girl of 15, 16, and you're having a baby, what do you want? You want your mom there. You want the midwife there. You want the older women who you love and trust and know to be there protecting you, coaching you through it, telling you what to do, telling you what's going to happen next, fixing the whole system, making sure that you're at peace, knowing how to react to this. And what has she's got? She's got Joseph and an ox, right? And what does he know to do? Nothing, right? He doesn't know any. And I'm sure he probably tried to walk the town getting help, but as far as we know, it was just him and her. And he has to figure out everything on his own. He's probably mid-20s, early 20s, never seen this before. They didn't let men in there to watch children get born. He's never seen this before. He doesn't know what to do, and that's how Jesus gets born, in that helpless scenario. And what's really funny right now, to think about it, most of you in the room know more about Joseph and Mary than you do about Caesar Augustus. Think about that. The almighty, powerful, rich, wealthy God on earth, Caesar Augustus, is a name you know and you know nothing about him. But every single one of you know something about Joseph and Mary. What a crazy twist God has on things. Isn't that amazing? I wonder how they felt in that moment, what was going on with them, that Jesus was born and they knew he was special. They had met an angel telling him he was special. They knew something was going on here, and I'm sure they were sitting there like, hey, Lord, you made this as impossibly inconvenient as you could have. I mean, when you said I was going to have a baby, and I said, okay, I'm going to lose my reputation, I'm going to lose my honor, my hometown's going to think I'm a slut, Joseph's going to lose his reputation, and then on top of it, you add travel to Bethlehem and have Jesus with nobody around. God, what were you thinking? And I wonder if they felt like God had abandoned them. But they knew one thing. They knew this baby's special. And something's going to happen with this baby, that whatever we've got going in our lives, we sacrifice everything to see that this baby makes it. And then you have the stable. Then we have then we have the shepherd. Every tableau has a shepherd. And of course, terrifying angels. All the nativities have that. Let's talk a little bit about the shepherd and the terrifying angels. Luke 2. Now there were in the same country shepherds living out in the fields, keeping watch over their flock by night. And behold, an angel of the Lord stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone all around them, and they were greatly afraid. They were greatly afraid. And then the angel said to them, do not be afraid. For behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which will be to all people. For there is born to you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. And this will be the sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in swaddling clothes lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host praising God, saying, glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill toward men. So it was, when the angels had gone away from them into the heaven, that the shepherds said to one another, let us now go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has come to pass, which the Lord has made known to us. And they came with haste, and they found Mary and Joseph and the babe lying in a manger. Now when they had seen him, they made widely known the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all those who heard it marveled at those things which were told them by the shepherds. But Mary kept all these things and pondered them in her heart. And then the shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things that they had heard and seen, as it was told them. Okay, so terrifying angels. I don't know why in every nativity, angels are always girly. I mean, these girly little angels, let's throw some wings on a girl and we'll call that good, right? That's not terrifying. And in all the art and the paint, they try to do it by making clouds and might and that kind of thing. And that's what, but angels aren't human beings. Angels are another class of being altogether. In spite of Hollywood, you need to know theologically, you don't die and go to heaven and become an angel. Human beings never become angels. Angels are an entirely different class of being altogether. They're not human beings with wings. They are a different sort of creature. And they do God's bidding. And when they show up, they are fierce and they are warrior-like. And I've read stuff of people who have seen angels. I've read some stuff from people who have died and gone to heaven and come back because evidently they were half-baked and weren't ready yet. I don't know. And all of them say when they see angels that they're at least anywhere between 9 and 12 feet tall, respectively speaking, bronze, glowing, like fierce glowing skin, fire eyes, and they're humanoid, but they're not human beings. And they are fierce and they are great warrior-like things. And they're terrifying. So these shepherds out in the fields above Bethlehem at night see these mighty angels. Now, this whole thing is kind of weird because we think shepherd is a cute, we know David was a shepherd and Jesus used himself as an image of a shepherd over his sheep and stuff. But you got to know, in Jesus' time, a shepherd was a low-class, low-brow, almost worthless person. If you were good for nothing, you could still be a shepherd. It's like, well, what's this guy? Well, he's dumb as a rock. He's undisciplined. He's wild. He's crazy. He drinks too much. Well, let's just make him a shepherd then. That's how it was mostly with shepherds. In Jesus' time, they couldn't keep the ceremonial laws, so they were seen as unclean. They were lowbrow people, sleeping out and camping out all night long and being with sheep all the time and living in the outdoors. And so when they came to town, they're like, woo, take a bath. Oh, my God, right? These guys were not high class. These guys were not the favored people in society. These were the lowbrow guys. And it's interesting because we celebrate December 25th as Jesus' birthday. And if you've ever wondered how we came to that, in the early days of the church, it was believed that everyone, I don't know where they got this, but it was believed you would die on the date of you were born, let me back up. You would die on the same day you were conceived. And I don't know where they got that idea, but they had this belief that you would die on the day that you were conceived. So they looked at Jesus dying in April over Passover. They did the math and, well, he's in December. And then there was this big celebration that was kind of taking place. It wasn't huge. I know everybody says, it was the pagan celebration, Saturnalia. Saturnalia is a little bit like, it wasn't all over the place. It wasn't celebrated everywhere. It wasn't a huge celebration. It was like, I don't know, Cinco de Mayo. It was like, sure, it happens, but it ain't a huge celebration, right? But they decided on December 25th, partly from the solstice of winter, and they picked that day based on, that would have been when he was born if he died on the day he was conceived, and that's how they had it. So December's picked. Here's the thing. It's wintertime in December, and everybody knows something. In the wintertime, shepherds did not stay out in the field all night long. Not in winter. They did in the summer, but not in winter. What are these shepherds doing in the fields in wintertime? In the wintertime, you bring the sheep in, you put them in the caves, you pen them in, you keep them safe. That's what you do. It's cold out there. There was only one place in the entire nation of Israel where the shepherds would be out with the sheep at night and not take them into a pen, and that was the place where they kept the ceremonial sheep that were used in the temple sacrifice. The sheep that would be used to be taken to Jerusalem and bought and sold in the sacrificial system where people had to atone for their sins by shedding the blood of an animal, the sheep were kept outside in Bethlehem. And about every couple days, they would bring a herd of them into the city, and the priests would pick them, and they'd put them in pens, and then folks would come to do this celebration. And what would really happen is you would have this sheep that you had raised in your house, and it was this perfect lamb, and you had taken care of it, you had washed it, you had fed it, you had kept it perfect, no scratches, no blemishes, and you brought it down to the temple. And what would happen is the priest would look your sheep over, and no matter how perfect it was, they would find a flaw. And once they found a flaw, they would say, yeah, you see this? Yeah, he's got a crooked ankle right there. We're feeling the ankle. That bone's not right. No, you can't sacrifice that sheep. It's not perfect. Go over to the pen and buy one of ours. How much is one of yours? $200. Well, a sheep's $30. Yeah, well, you got to buy one of our perfect sheep for $200. So after a while, people just quit bringing sheep. They're like, if we go there anyway, it doesn't matter. They're going to find a way to outlaw mine and make me buy theirs at 5 times the price. So I'll just go down there and buy the 5 times the price sheep. So the only place shepherds would be out at night with sheep was guarding the temple sheep for the sacrificial system. And so these Bethlehem shepherds, the other clue that they're not shepherds of the flock is they leave the flock to go to town and see what's going on. They leave the flock. I think that's fascinating because to me it's like they don't even know it, but they're leaving the sacrificial lambs to go to see the real Lamb of God. They're leaving the four-footed creatures that are only a temporary sacrifice to go see the child that they don't even know yet is the real sacrifice for their sins. And so they go down in there. I think it's crazy because these guys are hired. The angels appear to them. They're absolutely shocking. And then they say, here's the sign. When you go down to find this baby that's been born tonight, why don't they say, the baby will be glowing? Because every time you see art, they're the shepherds, and they're angels. Every time you see art, baby Jesus is always glowing. Right? He's always lighting the place up. Baby Jesus lighting the place up. Baby Jesus lighting up everything. Right there. I don't know why you don't say, when you get to town, find the glowing baby. That's the one. Because Jesus wasn't glowing. He was just normal. The sign will be, you'll find this kid wrapped in rags and placed in a food trough. So they knew not to even bother looking at houses, not to even bother looking at the inn. They were just going from cave to cave to cave till they found a baby that was in there, and they find him. They find this baby who's just an ordinary baby being born by an ordinary girl, young girl, and a dad who doesn't even know what he's doing and is probably scared spitless and is exhausted, has made it through the night, and they're living in a barn. And the shepherds know one thing. Angels came, terrified us, and told us about this child. It appeared to them. Now, typically, by the way, culture, I'm going to back up a little bit. Culturally, you were supposed to, when a baby was born, you hired musicians to come and sing songs at your house. That's how the Jews did it. You would like, hey, we've had a baby. Hire the band. They'll stand outside our doors and we'll sing songs about the new kid who was born. And they would sing these elaborate songs so the whole neighborhood could celebrate with you the birth of a child. And when Joseph and Mary, they have a baby, there's nobody singing. Except a heavenly host of angelic choir up on the mountainside. Singing glory to God in the highest. And on earth, peace and goodwill to men. Now, that doesn't mean peace from human to human. It doesn't mean goodwill of one man to another person. That's going to take centuries to try to get that. What it means is peace from God towards man. There's no longer going to be this barrier between God and man. That his son would be born who would destroy the barrier between God himself and a relationship, an intimate relationship with man. Peace on earth is peace from God to human beings, opening the door that would happen from his sacrifice. And so the shepherds bring this knowledge of this unusual birth. Something crazy's happened here. The birth was normal, but they go down there and they see him in there. There's no great lighting. The angels are not hovering over the stable. That's not the way the image would be. When they walked in there, it was just a girl in a barn. You know, kind of Joseph has cleaned out the manure and shoveled the straw around. They're doing the best they can to clean it up, and that's where they are. And that's what they see, but the shepherds know this is the sign. The sign is you'll see a baby where a baby shouldn't be. You'll see a poor child wrapped in rags, placed in a feed trough, and when you get down there, you know that's the greatest baby in the history of humankind. Go find it. That's the sign. Why can that be the sign? Because nobody wraps a baby in rags and puts him in a horse trough, right? Nobody puts him in a feed trough. And so the sign would be you'll see something that you won't see anywhere else, ever. And so that's how they know it's Jesus. And they don't know the whole thing that's going to happen, you know, in the grand scope of his life. But they do know, because the angels came, that child's something. And they do know because they're aware of this prophetic word that sometime in this century in the territory of Judea, coming out of what we would call Palestine, there's going to be a king who arises. J. Vernon McGee, a famous old radio pastor, he says in his commentary about this is not the way the Savior should come into the world. He did not lay aside his deity, he laid aside his glory, meaning he still was God in that baby body. He had laid aside his glory, not his godhood. There should have been more than just a few shepherds and angels to welcome him. All of creation should have been there. Instead of collecting taxes, that fellow Caesar should have been in Bethlehem to worship him. Jesus Christ could have forced him to do that very thing, but he did not. He laid aside his deity, but his prerogatives of deity, and he came as just a little baby, without power and without glory, but he came as a human. And so that brings us to the three wise men. Every nativity's got three wise men. Or, because someone wrote it once in a song, three kings. We three kings of Orion. They were never kings. The word king isn't there. Some guy wrote a song and ruined everything. Right? He didn't know. He was just trying to make money, I'm supposing. But they're not kings. They're what the Bible uses the term magi. They're magi. They're scholars. They're holy men. Let's look at Matthew. Now, get this. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we have come to worship him. And when they heard the king, they departed. I'm skipping a little bit around verses. And behold, the star which they had seen in the east went before them, till it came and stood over where the young child was. And when they saw the star, they rejoiced with exceeding great joy. And when they had come into the house, they saw the young child with Mary, his mother, and fell down and worshipped him. And when they had opened their treasures, they presented gifts to him, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Then Herod, when he saw that he was deceived by the wise men, was exceedingly angry. And he sent forth and put to death all the male children who were in Bethlehem and in all of its districts, from 2 years old and under, according to the time which he had determined from the wise men. So when the wise men show up, the magi show up, it's 2 years later. They're not there the night of this. They don't go to the stable. They're not there when Jesus was born. They show up after Jesus was born. The star appears, and for 2 years they finally pack up and come, and they find out where Jesus is. And when they get there, he's not living in a barn. He's in the house. And he's no longer a baby. He's a young child. So when the wise guys show up, they're meeting a toddler. And so the question is, well, who are these guys? Where are they coming from? How do they know? What's going on with them? And so we know they're not kings. They're great magi. And magi, another word for them could have been sorcerer. They were seen as deep scholars who knew things. They knew things about mathematics and astronomy. They knew things about chemistry. They knew things about medicine. They knew things about botany and zoology. They were high-level scholars. And because they knew so much, most people considered them sorcerers. And there's not three of them. There's three gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But they've been traveling across the entire Parthian and Roman Empire. There's probably 50, 60 of these guys showing up. They're traveling with a great entourage. They've probably got military protection, and they've got their baggage. They've got everything going with them. They're not just three lone guys. We always use three in the nativity because of the gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So these guys, these magi, where'd they come from? Who are they? How do they know that a king's being born in Bethlehem? Well, you got to go back 600 years before Jesus. And the nation of Babylonia, takes over, and they conquer all of that region of the Middle East, from Egypt over to modern-day Iraq and even the borders of Iran. And when Babylon conquers all of this, they set up the Babylonian Empire. One of the places they conquer and destroy is the city of Jerusalem. And when the Babylonians destroyed the city of Jerusalem in 586 BC, and actually they invaded like 3 times, and they first came around, 600, and then they came again, and then they came again. By the 586 BC, they're like, hey, you guys, we keep telling you to pay your taxes and shut your mouths, and you keep rebelling. So when they came in 586, they destroyed the city. And when they destroyed the city, they took everybody who was of any importance. They had first taken in the first couple of waves, like the sons of the nobles. They had taken those guys. If you were a high-ranking official and you had a son, they took your son and they carted him back to Babylon. That's where the prophet Daniel went in the first wave. By the time they get to the last wave in 586 BC, they take everybody who's of any value. If you're a silversmith, if you're a carpenter, if you're a goldsmith, if you're a blacksmith, if you know how to read and you know how to write, they take you back to Babylon, and they leave only the criminals, the robbers, the poorest of the poor, and the most ignorant of the most ignorant back in Jerusalem, along with the prophet Jeremiah. They leave him behind too. They go back to Babylon, and they resettle everything. And slowly these Jewish guys who were taken turned out to be pretty smart. And the Jewish guys who were taken back to Babylon start working their way up in the ranks of society, and they become sort of the scholars and the estate people, the planners, and the guys who are doing the bookkeeping and all of that kind of thing, running the whole thing. And Babylon serves for a while, and then there's this upstart city inside the power of Babylon called Media, and this other group called the Persians. And so they're all under the yoke of the Babylonian Empire, but the Medians and the Persians unite together and they say, let's overthrow Babylon. And they do. And so when they overthrow Babylon, eventually the Medians fall to the Persians, and the Persians become the one thing. And this guy named Cyrus the Great, he takes over the entire area. And Cyrus the Great takes it on, and he's, around 500 BC, 500 years before Jesus, and he tells all these people who've been captive, if you want to go home to your homeland, because they had taken captives from all over the whole Middle East, if you want to go home, you can go home. And some of the Jews decide to go home to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple, but many of the Jews stay behind in Babylon because got a good thing going, living the good life here in Babylon. Why would I want to go back? But they stay in Babylon. A lot of them don't return. So Cyrus the Great rules, and then he's got his Passagrade, that's his city, and he's kind of rules in and out of Babylon. So he has these major different capital cities, and he takes over. And there's Jerusalem. They sort of refile everything. And then remember back with Alexander the Great and the Persian Empire. This is all happening. Alexander the Great will come along later and destroy that empire. And then by the time you get to Rome, this group of the Cyrus the Great and the Persians had fallen off, and they were called Parthians. And the Parthians had taken over. Hundreds of years have gone by. Different rulers, different uprisings, different takeovers, from Babylon to the Persians to the Parthians to Alexander the Great. They'd had it all. Rome could never take the Parthians. And through all those hundreds of years, there were guys studying the Bible. And they weren't studying the Bible in Jerusalem. They were studying the Bible in modern-day Iran and modern-day Iraq. And they were studying and they were looking at it. And so when these wise men are studying the Bible, they are the great-great-great-great-grandchildren of those who were taken captive by the Babylonians back to Babylon. And a group of them are like, we're reading the Bible and we're seeing these texts and we're reading what the prophet's saying. We figured something out. There's going to be a king born very, very soon. Back in Jerusalem. In fact, we got to find this king. And then when the star appears, because remember I said they're astrologers, they're biologists, they're zoologists, they know everything about everything. When the star appears, they know that's amazing. A particular alignment, some think of Jupiter, and you can do your homework yourself what the Star of Bethlehem was. There's all sorts of stuff online about that. And so there it is, the sign has come. A bunch of them pack up, they leave the Parthian Empire, and they head to Jerusalem. And they want to meet the new king. And if you're going to meet the new king in an empire, where would the new king obviously come from? The old king, right? There's a king on the throne. If a new king's been born, he must be son of the king who's there now. Let's go meet the king and see this new son he has. Only they get there and they realize it's Herod the Great sitting on the throne, and he's not even a Jew. Caesar Augustus once said, because Herod the Great killed so many of his own sons, killed his own wife, killed so many people. He was an evil, evil, wicked man. He built good stuff, but he's an evil, wicked man. Caesar Augustus once said, it's safer to be one of Herod's pigs than one of his sons, because he was adopted Judaism, so he didn't eat pork. And so and so they show up to say to Herod, hey, where's this new son you just had who's going to be the king of the Jews, the one prophesied for? And Herod's like, ooh, I don't like this. I've already killed 4 of my boys for trying to rebel against me. So secretly he figures it out. And then, of course, they start watching the court more, and these guys from Parthia, so they go, ooh, we better keep quiet about this. And they dig through the scriptures, and they say, well, where is this new king going to be born? And they discover from the Micah passage in Bethlehem. And so these guys go to Bethlehem. And again, baby Jesus isn't in the stable. He's not wrapped in swaddling clothes anymore. He's 2 years old. How do they know? How do they know who they're going to go see? Because word had spread everywhere since the time of the shepherds, the day that Jesus was born, about the angels showing up. So when they get to heaven, they end up in Bethlehem, like, we hear there was a baby born here maybe 2 years ago. That's the first time we saw the star. A unique child, a special child. Oh, you mean Joseph and Mary's kid. How do you know? Well, let me tell you the story about the night he was born and the angels showed up. The shepherd's been drinking free beer ever since. Every time they go into a bar, no, they never have to buy a round, right? They're telling that story over and over, so now they know. And they go down there and they're worshiping him. It's interesting because the passage said that they worship him. Am I going forward or backward? I don't know now. Yeah, Cyrus the Great. I'm going backward. Okay. So they go and they worship him. So that's an interesting thought because they knew he wasn't a human king if they were worshiping him. They had studied the scriptures, and you know what the prophecies of old were? The Messiah was going to be a God-man. He was going to be God in human flesh. And they had read enough scriptures and were knowledgeable enough to know God is in that little boy. And so they were worshiping him. And they give him these gifts that are fit for a king. Gold and frankincense is the gift you would give a priest. The priests used frankincense. And myrrh, which was, among other things, it was extensively used in burials. So they give him a gift of being a king, the gold. They give him a gift for being a priest, the frankincense, and they give him a gift for the death that's going to come of the atoning sacrifice on the cross, the myrrh. They see it all coming. And then they secretly go home to another passage. I was talking with Virgil about it today. If you've ever been to Bethlehem, the one church that was on site of the cave, it survived. When the Muslims took over, oftentimes they destroyed and devastated and ruined churches, and they've been rebuilt over time. The one church that was not destroyed by the Muslims was the one sitting over the cave in Bethlehem. And Virgil and I were talking, the reason it wasn't destroyed is in the artwork that's up there, they saw 3 wise men, 3 magi in the artwork who looked just like them. And because of that, they're like, let's let this one stand. Because they saw that in the church in Bethlehem at the Nativity. Lastly, there's always an ox and a donkey. And like, okay, that just shows us it's a stable. No. There's meaning behind an ox and a donkey. Isaiah says, an ox knows its owner, and a donkey its master's manger. But Israel does not know, and my people do not understand. Why is there an ox and a donkey in a nativity scene? Because they represent people who have forgotten God. People who no longer are aware of what God's doing and who God is and what he's going to do in life and what he's going to do in society. And as much as this is going on, the ox and the donkey say, oh, we're clueless. And then there's also always a sheep. And if you got a nativity at home, make sure you put your sheep next to your Jesus. Why would the sheep be next to Jesus? Because this is the Lamb of sacrifice. All of us like sheep have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way, but the Lord has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, and like a sheep that is silent before its shearers, he did not open his mouth. When John the Baptist first sees Jesus coming to get baptized, even though they were cousins, when John the Baptist sees him in that moment, he points to Jesus and says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Why is there always a sheep in the nativity? To remind us he's the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. So the animals are important. Every piece of the nativity means something. And I look at this and I think, you know, what's interesting for us now, modern era, as we look at this, we're still represented here. You and I are still in this mix. And the question is like, well, where am I in this? Am I the ox and the donkey and I'm clueless about God? God is trying to speak to me and do things in my life and get my attention and talk to me and tell me stuff, and I'm completely ignorant. In fact, I'm willfully ignorant. Is God trying to get our attention and say, I want to move in your life, I want to talk to you, I want you to know me, I want to have a deep relationship, but you don't understand and you don't try to listen? I look at this thing and I wonder, are we more like the shepherds? And we're like, God, if you show me a sign, you give me something big, you give me a power, you do something miraculous, and then I'll follow you. You do that and I'll follow you. And sometimes God does and that works. But God's always looking for us to get past the angels and towards himself. Past the signs and wonders and into a relationship with him. That's what God's preference is. Are some of us more like the wise men, where we study and we look and we're searching and we're trying to find the things of God? And we're aware that God is trying to speak to us and aware that God has spoken in the past and God is doing stuff in and out in society and doing stuff in and out of my life. If I just pay enough attention, I can find out who God is and what God expects from me. And then I respond accordingly. That's a good spot to be. But honestly, the best spot to be, if we look at this, is to be one of these two. Joseph and Mary. I know, I can't be the Virgin Mary. I don't qualify. It's like, don't worry about it. What we mean is two humble people who weren't mighty, who weren't majestic, who didn't have lots of talent, skills, and abilities, who weren't rich, who weren't powerful. I mean, Joseph we know him as a carpenter. The Greek word that's actually used that says he's a carpenter, technically it could be translated house builder. And since they didn't build houses out of wood but build them out of stone, he could have been a bricklayer. Very likely he was a stonemason or a bricklayer. And Mary's like, I'm just a girl who's just trying to figure out how to make my way through life here. We're humble, we're nobody. Sure, we come from this long line of King David, but that was a long time ago. It's been 500 years since anybody ever sat on the throne of King David. That's dead and gone. What we might have been, could have been, should have been, would have been is over. We're just two blue-collar, simple people trying to create a simple life. But when God speaks to them, you know what they say? Okay, God. How do you want to use me? What do you want me to do, God, for the sake of your kingdom? And they're aware to do that will be a price. They're aware a price will be paid by them to let God do what he wants in them, through them, and with them. But when you look at the Nativity, they're of the highest caliber. Not because they're rich and powerful and mighty and the smartest and the most well-positioned in society, but because they're two people who turned to God and said, your will be done. What do you want me to do? Even if it costs me. If God were to walk into the room right now on this Sunday morning and speak with an audible voice, you know what he would say? He would say, can you be like Joseph and Mary and let me do things in and with and through your life that it would spread my kingdom and would spread my glory and would change the world, but it might hurt you for me to get it done? Would you still say, so be it, let the Lord's will be done in me? That's what God is after. And from here on out, for the rest of the Christmas season, when you see these little manger settings and nativities, let that click into your mind. Say, God, speak to me, tell me what you want, and give me the courage to say, your will be done. Why don't you stand as we close in prayer? Jesus, we stand today aware that some people in our society are like Herod, trying to destroy you. They don't want your name even spoken. They would rather shut you down, kill you, and destroy you. But they will never win. We know that because you are the God who sits on the throne of the universe. Lord, some of us, I feel a little bit like the ox and the donkey. I don't know, and I don't understand. And for people who feel that way, Lord, I pray that this week you would give them a sense of revelation, that you would speak and you would show us. You would reveal yourself to us in a powerful way, that we could move from people who say, oh, I know I don't understand, but now I'm questing. Now I'm searching for answers, and God is talking. Lord, some of us are like the shepherds, and we're waiting for the sign, the wonder, the incredible thing that would transform our lives when you're saying, no, it's right in front of you. And so, Lord, I just pray for those of us who are looking for that. It's not wrong to get a sign or wonder. We know that. But it shouldn't stop there. Lord, some of us are searching your scriptures, and we're searching your word, and we're trying to find your direction, your call in our lives. We're trying to find your purpose through what we study and through how we're behaving. And Lord, keep guiding us that way. But for all of us in the room, would you give us the spirit of Joseph and Mary? Humble, not rich, not mighty, not skilled, not powerful, not influential, but people who would just say, Lord, if you want to use me, here I am, send me. Even if it hurts, I'll be obedient to you. And that's what would please your heart more than anything. Will you change us into that kind of person? And will you do it this Christmas season? Will you begin working in all of our lives that in a few days' time, on Christmas Day, we would say, all of us collectively would say, I've seen God this season. I have met Jesus this season. Jesus has spoken to me. God has used me. Would you give us all something in our life that we could say that, Lord? We see you moving and know that you're real. This we pray in your mighty and holy name, the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. All right. God bless you.